See, the conversation about Salzburg has got us thinking about this new Champions League format and which teams within it are benefiting as a result. It does seem as if the Champions League at the moment is divided between, as it always is to a certain extent, but nevertheless even more so, between the giants of European football and the relative minnows of European football. And maybe the Salzburg 3-0 defeat to PSG is indicative of that. Just remind us, Andy, what is different about the new format, and why is it that there are certain teams that are working with it and being able to get success with it, where others seem to be struggling?
Well, of course, it's one league rather than several groups with 36 teams. Top 8 go straight through to the last 16. 9 to 24 will get in as a series of playoff matches, which will be seeded from top half to bottom half in February, which promise to be pretty exciting. Obviously, it's a lot of football to only get rid of a handful of teams, but I think it's interesting because we've talked a lot at the start of this, and we've talked a lot at on OTC actually about the amount of goals being scored, and moreover the amount of thrashings being handed out. And it has felt sometimes as if you think of Dortmund versus Celtic early on. You think of Bayern versus Dinamo Zagreb and a few others where maybe teams have really gone for it because of goal difference, because it's goal difference that counts to separate teams on equal points now, not head to head. And the other thing is that the sense that maybe one team's thinking, we've got a couple of extra matches, maybe we should conserve energy, and kind of packing it in. And I think, at the moment, all we have is theory, because we haven't even completed this first new group stage. So these are just ideas at the moment. But what I find most interesting is, I think you're right to an extent when you talk about the difference between the haves and the have-nots, because, of course, you need binoculars to see Slovan Bratislava all the way down there. But on the other hand, you've got the two French teams that you wouldn't expect to be doing it, both in the top 8. In Brest, who are an amazing story, and as well Lille, who are not one of the they're not PSG or Monaco. Okay, they're not quite as much of a dark horse as Brest, but for them to be in the top 8, particularly when you look at the fixtures they've had, it's just remarkable, really. So they've had both Madrid teams, they've had Juventus. I mean, if you compare their run of fixtures, Lars, up to this point to PSG's, much harder.
Yeah,
and they've got 6 more points out of it.
So yeah, I watched Lille yesterday. Without getting too personal, I had a pretty grueling travel day, and I had to stay up to watch all the things, and I kind of wanted to sleep. And then I looked; it was like Atleti versus Bratislava and Lille versus Sturm Graz, and I thought, well, this is not what I needed right now. I needed one slightly more interesting game. But Lille versus Sturm Graz was really fun. There was a lot of technically clever players in there. And I quite enjoyed watching. I mean, Lille having both the sort of I was about to say a lapsed Norwegian, Osam Saroui. He grew up in Norway, but he's decided to play for Morocco. Good luck to him on that one. I wish him all the best. It's hard to get into the Norwegian team at the moment.
Why do you have to bring up personal stuff? This tribalism.
No, listen, I'm saying, but he's a very good player, and I enjoy watching him. It's great close, and just watching this game, two teams I'm not necessarily super interested in. There was just a lot of cute little technical details and very enjoyable game. And I think Lille definitely is a team that has surprised. And it's easy to look at this table and focus on the Slovan Bratislava, who have and young boys who've got 0 points, both of them, and Leipzig hilariously also have 0 points. But this inequality, the fact that there's inequality in European football, that didn't start with the big table. This didn't start with it's been this way for years. It looks a little bit more stark, I guess, when we look at a big table like this. But you had teams that went through the group stage with no points or 1 point before as well. And what we are seeing is teams like Brest, teams like Lille, who are performing a little bit better than expected, and we've got PSG who are banging trouble. We've got Leipzig who are kind of embarrassing themselves. Like there's stuff going on here. That's amusing, no?
Yeah, it begs a couple of questions though. How have Brest and Lille done it? How have they achieved that? And also, we'll come to the other end of the table in a moment where we see some big names that perhaps shouldn't be there, and we'll try and get to the bottom of why they are where they are. But Brest and Lille, Andy, what have they done differently? Why have they been so successful?
With both of them, before we get into the format, I want to talk about the coaches, because Eric Roy has been amazing for Brest, given the job short term to try and steer them away from relegation, which he did. Then in the first full season, got them into the Champions League. Obviously, them being the size of club that they are, they weren't allowed to play their Champions League games at home because they have a couple of semi-permanent stands. B, they lost some of their more important players. You look at particularly Lilian Brassier, Mounier went, Satriano. They lost a lot of players, and they've somehow managed to. Look, they were never going to pull up trees again in Liga, but they've managed to put together such a run of form in the Champions League, winning 4 of 6. It's just remarkable, really. They do have quality in there still, but not to the level that they should really be getting the results that they are. I think they've done really well to get over that beating in Barcelona, and I think Eric Roy will have helped them get past that by saying, look, come on, you can lose to Barcelona in the Champions League, it can happen. But I think the format has helped them as well. I mean, it's funny because I think when you play that team and you get a bit of a kicking off them, it's like, fine, you don't have to play them again, do you? You don't have to face the big beast. Although, of course, they do have Real Madrid at home or at Guingamp, their adopted home, for the last match day, which is going to be fascinating because, of course, one of the things that's changed about the format is all the group games are played on the same night on match day, the last match day, which is Wednesday, 29th of January, 2 days before the transfer deadline. That's going to be quite a week. But in terms of Lille, I think you have to talk about their coach as well. Bruno Genesio has never really had the credit he deserved, not for his work at Lyon, not for his work against Rennes. And, he's sort of been referred to in France for some years, like sort of quite mockingly, quite disparagingly as Pep Genesio. But the fact is, players love him, but good players respect him and they respond to him. And you look at like what he's been able to do with this Champions League campaign. I mean, and by the way, they're still in the top 4 in France, so they're managing to go on both fronts. And they're not the richest club in the division by any stretch of the imagination. So we've got a super difficult fixture list. Fine, we'll just get on with it. We've got injuries at the moment to Zhigrova, Angel Gomez. We weren't able to qualify Andre Gomes because it was too late. Fine, we'll just get on with it. There's no whinging under Genesio. There's just a commitment to being brave, playing good football, and trying to win the games. And it's really impressive.
Yeah. I mean, he started Mitchell Bakker at right wing against Graz, which is not really. You look at that, you think, why is he what? When you first turn on the television, you just think he's constantly out of position. But it's like, no, he's starting this very tall left back at right wing, and then he scored a goal. So that's like, yeah, good stuff by Genesio. Good improvisation. How
have Real Madrid ended up at the wrong end, if you like, of the table in the Champions League, though, Lars?
Yeah, they're 20th. They've gotten themselves into a little bit of trouble. Real Madrid. I think I can't believe I'm going to say this out loud. They have had a slightly difficult draw. I know. So they're Real Madrid. There should be no such thing as a difficult draw, I suppose. But if you look at where they've dropped points, they came unstuck against Lille, who Andy just explained to us why they're very good. And then they've lost against AC Milan, and then they lost against Liverpool. And that's just kind of, yeah, that can happen. And it's there's one thing that is a surprise now that we're sort of looking at how this new format has worked out. There is a huge difference in terms of like the draws some of the teams have ended up getting. Because Real Madrid so far have played Stuttgart, Lille, Borussia Dortmund, AC Milan, Liverpool, and Atalanta. That's a tricky draw. So they've got Salzburg and Brest for the next two. Salzburg, of course, this isn't the best version of Salzburg, and Brest are a bit of a surprise team. They end up playing two of the surprise teams in both Lille and Brest. But I was also pivoting a little bit, looking at how on earth Leipzig got 0 points. How's that happened? But they've played Atletico Madrid, Juventus, Liverpool, Celtic away, Inter, and Aston Villa. Like, again, that is a tricky draw, I think, compared to some of the other teams. So it does seem that the algorithms that puts these fixture lists together, I didn't notice it at the start. It's one of the things I don't love about the new format. In the old format, you'd look at the groups, you'd analyze the groups, and you see who's going to do well here and there. Now, realistically, I'm not going to memorize the fixture list all 36 teams have ended up getting. Like, that's just not, I'm not going to get my head around that. But now that we're 6 games in, you notice some of these teams going, that is a tricky fixture list you were handed. And I guess that's going to be one of the quirks of this system going forward, is that someone's just going to get... going to get saddled with very tricky fixtures.
I'm not going to ask you who, but I'm going to ask Andy about the special San Pauli edition of OTC that you recorded earlier this week, Andy.
Yeah, not just one, but two, if you like. We talked about our YouTube channel earlier. We can get all sorts of goodness from on the road in Europe. We did a feature-length episode on St. Pauli, going behind the scenes, talk to board members, players, fans about what makes it such a special, what makes it such a different club, and how they're changing things further to really stay true to their principles in the top level of European football, where they are, of course, in the top division for the first time in 13 years. There's also, for those of you who like the whole Sonic experience, and why wouldn't you? I mean, you're listening to this after all. There's the just audio pod version, which is a bit longer. They're two distinctive and complementary pieces. I think you'll enjoy them.